Good afternoon, everyone. It is a real pleasure for me to lead this webinar today. This is one of the topics I'm probably most passionate about and one that I think has been very important to me and my health journey. So we're going to talk today about mindfulness. Be here now, mindfulness works. And this is part of our staying well and calm in the midst of the COVID storm. I am the Grace Sills Endowed Professor of Psychiatric Mental Health Nursing in the College of Nursing at Ohio State, and I'm also the director of two programs, the Implementation Science Core of our Evidence-Based Practice Institute here at Ohio State, and also director of the Nurse Executive Track in our DNP program. I also share with you that I am a licensed advanced practice registered nurse in mental health and also a certified, board-certified integrated nurse coach. As we've been doing with this series, we just want to make this thread very nicely, and I want to just remind you what you focused on last week if you were here, and that was on really being physically active and being physically present. Breath and stretch were emphasized. Finding a new way to increase your steps at home was stressed. Creating a weekly SMART goal, and then igniting or finding a new movement pattern. So it was all about just move and remembering how important physical activity and movement are. So we're going to talk today about mindfulness and the importance of mindfulness. And I want to start with asking you a question. We are all very distracted, and consequently, we often aren't attending to the moment. So right now, what are you doing? Think to yourself, what are you doing? What are you thinking about right now? And how are you feeling? Now, if you check your answers, were your answers to numbers 1 and 2 the same? If they weren't, if you're doing something but thinking about something else, you're in good company, because this is a common problem. In fact, the research tells us that we spend about half of our time with a wandering mind, which means we're spending about half of our time present in our lives and half of our time not present. And so we're missing out on half of our lives. And the consequences of mind wandering can be mistakes, misplaced objects, and lost productivity, but it also leads to impacting our happiness and our ability to thrive. So if you look at your third question, how are you feeling right now? Research has also demonstrated for us that we're the happiest when what we are doing is what we're thinking about. In a book by Killingworth and Gilbert titled A Wandering Mind is an Unhappy Mind, they point out that you are better off if you're doing the dishes and thinking about the dishes than if you are doing the dishes and thinking about a trip to Mexico, even in the winter. So the idea is to really focus on the present moment. And we know this from past religions and philosophic traditions that express for us that our greatest joy is when we're present and attentive. Happiness is here, happiness is now. So we're going to spend a bit of time today talking about present moment awareness. And I will leave you today with a little activity that I think, or a practice that will allow you to be present today and think about how that can be integrated into your life. There is so much external stimulation in our environments: phones, emails, Netflix, squirrels, technology, phones. And so we are bombarded all day long with hyper-stimulating events. And we are actually on the train of thought before we even realize have even aborted it. And the way to slow that down is to start to practice mindfulness throughout your day. And the way to start to practice mindfulness throughout the day is to cultivate a practice where you really attend to it and practice, practice, practice. A few more comments about why this is important is we are really stressed out. So not only are we really distracted, but we're pretty stressed out. Research shows that stress levels are increasing every year, that about 1 in 4 Americans report extreme stress, and about 4 in 5 adults, that's 80% of us, have at least one physical symptom of stress. We also know that stress leads to mental health problems, and what we're finding more and more is that it's leading to sleeping problems, eating poorly, snapping at others, and having trouble concentrating. So mindfulness-based stress reduction is one program that evolved that has become very well studied and very effective. And out of MBSR, we're starting to see additional programs that are mindfulness-based and can incorporate lots of different strategies and skills, but the essence of them is to really focus on being in the present moment. So we're distracted, we're stressed out, and we're not good at managing our stress. And in fact, when we look at that, only about 20% of Americans say they practice any kind of regular stress management activity. And instead, we find ourselves using potentially dangerous or damaging coping mechanisms like shopping, eating, excessive TV, gambling, drinking, and other ways to numb ourselves, essentially. And we're really never taught how to practice mindfulness and how to be present and manage stress. And in fact, if you think about it, many of us live very jittery, on edge, and constantly alert for the next alarm that, from an evolutionary perspective, grew when we could be attacked by something. Where now, instead, where we don't have many dangers like we used to have, we remain, though, in some ways, every day in some sort of crisis and continually activating our body's stress response. So instead, I'm talking to you about quieting the mind, about being still. And that's something that very few people have been doing. I want to just bring us to the obvious reason we introduced this series, and that's the pandemic effect. I was running a couple of weeks ago when we had already been in the social isolation zone, and I ran across these two pictures, and I took them with my phone. On the left, it feels like those flowers are sort of separate, isolated, not able to support each other, help each other nourish and flourish and grow together. Whereas on the right, I think of the flowers as more of a community, nourishing each other, growing together, supporting each other, and bringing beauty together in a bunch of flowers as we do with each other when we're able to support each other and love each other. Another really important component of mindfulness is recognizing self-compassion. And self-compassion is not only important for yourself, but if you're going to be able to love others and be compassionate for others, it starts with you. So when you think about what types of things do you think about and judge yourself about and criticize yourself for? And what's the tone or the language that you use with yourself when you make a mistake? So for example, the other day, I had applied for a national opportunity that I hadn't been involved with for a long time. This was very recent. And I was pretty sure I had a good chance of being selected. It was highly competitive, but I wasn't selected, and I was somewhat surprised. And of course I was disappointed. And my immediate response was to say, wow, they didn't like me, or I wasn't credible enough, or they had people better than me. And I was able to catch myself and say, you know what? You are disappointed, Sharon, and you are sad that they didn't select you, and that is just okay. No reason to judge myself, no reason to run from those sad feelings, but to just be present with it and say, just wasn't meant to be this time, and I can own that I was disappointed. And that's the whole point, is to reframe your language, to be kind, supportive, and understanding to yourself and to other humans, recognizing we're all human and we acknowledge our humanity instead of blowing things out of proportion. A couple of quotes that reflect, I think, the importance of self-compassion are one by Jack Kornfield, who's a well-known meditation mindfulness expert and leader. And he says, if your compassion does not include yourself, it's incomplete. And many of you know the work in the multiple books of Brene Brown, who does research on shame and vulnerability. And she says, if you can't ask for help without self-judgment, you're not going to be able to offer help without judging others. So I think those are two really examples of why self-compassion is important. And it's interesting that we are sort of like butterflies sometimes. Butterflies can't see their wings. They can't see truly how beautiful they are, but everyone else can. And so the process of becoming more accepting and loving and non-judgmental of ourselves will help us to see our own beauty, which will then extend to other people. And as I move into defining a bit more scientifically, if you will, mindfulness and what we know about it, I want to start with this quote out of a book that I use on how to be mindful by Ann Barnes. And it starts with, "You are not your thoughts." So do your thoughts overwhelm and confuse you? Do you wish your mind had an off button? Much of our suffering stems from the fact that we think our thoughts are the core of our being. We identify with our thoughts and allow them to dictate how we feel. And as our thoughts are often noisy, negative, and chaotic, it is no wonder we struggle. So the solution lies not in trying to get rid of our thoughts, but rather to stop our habit of identifying with them. Simply observe the thoughts without judgment and let them go. You don't have to be a slave to your thoughts and feelings. What gives them fuel and makes them real is the attention we bring to them. Take away that attention and that thought or feeling ceases to exist. So a brief definition I created here is that mindfulness is an evidence-based strategy for reducing stress and anxiety, brings calm and lowers that stress response when we are able to be in the present moment. Now, as this whole series is evidence-based tactics, if you will, and I'm an evidence-based researcher as well as a researcher in health behavior, it would be important to tell you or share with you what the evidence shows. So I looked at 7 systematic reviews, meta-analyses and systematic reviews. And while the quality of studies, continues to grow and continues to be needed, what we know as of this point is that evidence shows that improves employee psychological functioning. We see effects on specific markers of inflammation, cell-mediated immunity, and biological aging. In health profession students, we've seen decreases in stress, anxiety, and depression, as well as improving mindfulness, mood, and self-efficacy and empathy. There have been a number of studies with nurses, and we've seen increased or improved mental health. We've seen in patients who suffer with chronic pain, improvement in their pain and depressive symptoms, and improvement in their quality of life. And then there have been a number of neurological studies looking at brain imaging, and while it's not yet completely clear how mindfulness works, there seems to be some strong evidence that there are changes in the insula of the brain which show that the brain and the changes are being affected by the focus, and so that internal reactions are being seen in the moment. So there's some evidence that that's helping us slow down away from the rapid thinking and the rapid trains of thoughts that can really impact our ability to calm ourselves. This is just a slide on the papers that I used, and here's a few more slides, including a paper that Dr. Melnick led us on in improved strategies that show improvements in mental health, physical health, and mindfulness was one of the strategies that was shown to be effective. So I want to introduce you briefly to Jon Kabat-Zinn. I'm sure many of you already know who Dr. Kabat-Zinn is. He says the best way to capture moments is to pay attention. This is how we cultivate mindfulness. And mindfulness means being awake. It means knowing what you're doing. And I'm going to just show you a very brief clip of a little interview with Dr. Kabat-Zinn.
My name is Jon Kabat-Zinn. My working definition, or what I call operational definition of mindfulness, is it's the awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. And then I sometimes find in the service of self-understanding and wisdom. We all take ourselves too seriously because we believe that there is someone to take seriously. That me, we become the star of our own movie. The story of me, starring, of course, me. And everybody else becomes a bit player in our movie. And then we forget that it's a fabrication, it's a construction, and that it's not a movie, and that there's no you that you can actually find if you were to sort of start to peel back. Well, are you your name? Are you your age? Are you your thoughts? Are you your opinions? Are you even your genetic inheritance? Even your genes, if you meditate or eat differently, they're going to be expressed by the hundreds differently. So you're not even your genetic inheritance. So who are you? And here's where the rubber really meets the road. The question is much more important than the dime store answers that we come up with. So then we can notice this phenomenon called selfing. How much of our time we are running the narrative of I, me, and mine, which is now being identified with certain regions of the brain that do that narrative default mode kind of thing. And then mindfulness, MBSR, has been shown to actually light up other areas, or more lateral areas, where there's no more story of me. It's just this breath, that out breath, and it's not me breathing either. If it was up to me to be breathing, I would have died a long time ago. Whoops, got distracted, forgot, dead.
I really like that clip by Dr. Kabat-Zinn, because he speaks to that sort of ego we can fall into, and just focusing on ourselves instead of just being present in the moment and experiencing life as it unfolds. So mindfulness is a mental state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment while calmly acknowledging and accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations. It's really that focusing on the essence and peace of the present moment. The quality or state of being conscious or aware of something. And we cultivate that ability to be fully present, to be aware of where we are and what we're doing, rather than reacting and being overwhelmed by what's going on around us. So the aim is to experience life as it unfolds, moment by moment. And as a researcher in behavior change and organizational change, I want to emphasize here, and especially with mindfulness, that you can have your effective innovation, your effective strategy demonstrated in multiple trials, but left unattended to, it won't be used. It has to be implemented effectively using multiple strategies. And for mindfulness, that means practice and finding what works for you, and finding the types of meditation or mindfulness activities that work for you. And it's going to be different for every single person. There's no sense of what it has to be. There's no time that you must do it. There's no many days of the week. It's entirely whatever brings some peace and stillness and space in your life that can make you have self-compassion and compassion for your friends and family, patients, and loved ones in the world. And providing that context together, these things will lead to be able to execute on what we know to be an effective strategy to reduce stress. Now, cultivating a practice, I'm going to say a few things about that as I move into walking us through an activity. There are 5 strategies or 5 elements that can really help you develop a strategy or a practice that you can find works for you. The first one is to prepare yourself. And when I say prepare yourself, this isn't about performance. It's not good meditation or bad meditation. It doesn't need to be evaluated. It isn't performance-based mindfulness. That misses the point. It's all about learning. So for example, if you're using your breath, the object of the attention, the goal isn't to remain focused on your breath for long periods of time. It's learning what it's like to settle your attention on one thing. So whether it's the breath, an emotion, some guided imagery, something that that you want to develop for yourself, it's just staying present and staying with it. So the breath has been very effective in teaching people how to do that. Your mind will wander as you prepare yourself. You're going to learn that we have very busy minds. And what you can learn from that is, what is your mind focused on? Does it tend to go to one typical topic? And if so, maybe you find that you're ruminating about something, and maybe you can find some time set aside to focus on that thought and that thought pattern rather than making it consume you throughout the day. So it may need attention, and it's good to become aware of that. So our minds wander, and that is what the brain does. And the more you practice, that's why this again is all about practice, the more you're going to be able to develop a habit of bringing yourself back to the present moment. That's going to bring you stress reduction. It's going to lower your stress response, and it's going to really make you more happy in the end in terms of really enjoying who you are. The second thing is bringing your heart into it. Now, not everybody teaches this necessarily, but there's plenty of us that believe that bringing your heart into it is important, to be tender, to bring tenderness and kindness to it, to respect the life being lived, and that's your life. And also, if you're in pain of any sort, if you're trying to meditate or be mindful of pain that you're experiencing, whether emotional or physical, being tender and supportive is the kind of attention you want in the moment. It's that self-compassion. You're doing this practice ultimately because you care about yourself, and because possibly you know that doing this practice will be a gift to those around you. And then forgiving yourself. You're not going to find perfection at this. When I started this practice years ago, I think it took me 2 decades to really find it worked for me and what would work for me, because I was too judgmental and too hard on myself. And it's a matter of really just allowing yourself. If you fall off, if you only want to do it for a minute, if you take a break from it, it's fine. You can start it again at any time, because it only takes a moment and it always can bring you back. And then thanking yourself. That's probably the most important part of this, that you're giving yourself time in your busy day, and you're attending to your own learning, your own health, and your own well-being. This imprints in your memory that you care enough about yourself to pay attention to you. That self-compassionate, caring type of energy is healing. And imagine if we had days, weeks, and months ahead that focused on this kind of energy circulating, and how our minds and bodies would be so different. So these are the 4 essential elements. And if you find the 5th one is a good fit for you, that is having a buddy, somebody that can motivate you and help you feel connected, that's another really useful strategy. So the last slide I want to show you, last 2, before I introduce a little practice, is one on just thinking about the different types of mindfulness practices. They can be body scanning, which just helps you become aware of the different sensations in your body and bringing attention to those. And I'm going to introduce that in the practice. There's mindful movement like yoga, bringing attention to stretching and muscles and joints, and really breath as you do those. There's sitting practices, which is what we're going to do today, which is just being present and focusing on some activity or breath or mindfulness moment, if you will. And then there's walking practices to just be aware of what's around you, and trying not to be thinking the whole time you're walking, but just looking around. So before we switch over to actually participating in a mindfulness practice, I thought I would just highlight for you a number of different reasons, or focuses, if you will, that you might want to be the center of your meditation or your mindfulness activity. It might be that you're wanting to create calm or be creative. It may be that you want to focus on living mindfully. It might be a healing focus. It might be about moving. It could be that you want to generate love and compassion for self and others, solving problems. Or it could be manifesting your dreams. And this one I particularly like when I want to do a check-in as to, am I consistent with my purpose and my North Star of what I want in my life. And then lastly, you may want to connect to the divine or spirit or whatever that means for you. So I'm going to go ahead now and ask you to sit comfortably. And we're going to go ahead and do a mindfulness meditation practice together. So be sure you won't be disturbed during this time. I recommend you sit in a chair comfortably with your feet flat on the ground, connecting with earth. Be kind to yourself during this practice together. If you need to shift, do so slowly and mindfully. And it's okay to know you're going to have thoughts. Try to just be kind to yourself and accept your thoughts. No judgment of your thoughts, just welcome them. The whole idea here is to be gentle and non-judgmental during your time. Let go of expectations. You've come to this place today, so settle in and allow yourself to benefit from this time of space, calmness, and some silence. And I encourage you to stick with it to the end. So go ahead and close your eyes or cap them halfway with a soft, unfocused gaze. This helps you to go inward and not be distracted by external stimuli. And bring your awareness to your breath. Inhale through your nose to your belly, hold it, and then exhale. And I want you to do this a couple of times. Inhaling through your nostrils into your belly, pausing, and then exhaling. If you find your thoughts wandering, gently come back to this practice. Thoughts are okay, they will come. Be kind to yourself and let go of judgment. You're meditating correctly. So now I want you to take 2 or 3 deep yawns. You can fake a yawn to stimulate a real one. Now let your breathing return to a normal pace. And just notice the natural rhythm. No need to adjust it, just notice the natural rhythm. We're going to go through a little body scan. Bring your attention to the top of your head. And relax the muscles at the top, the sides, and the back of your head. Just try to soften it. And move to your forehead and your eyebrows, your eyes, ears, and your cheeks. And just soften them. And let your jaw relax. Your tongue and your lips. Just let your tongue drop to the floor of your mouth. Bring your attention to your throat. Allow the muscles surrounding it to relax. Then move to the back of your neck and your shoulders. And again, just let them soften. Your upper arms, forearms, and hands. Just softening them as you go. Your thumb and fingers. The palm of your hands. Now bring awareness to your chest. Try to soften those muscles that make up the chest wall. And relax your belly and your lower abdomen. Move to the top of your back. Relax the muscles around your shoulders, the middle of your back, and the lower part of your back, all the way down to your buttocks. Move to your right thigh. Notice the muscles around the knee, the front of your leg, your calf and ankle, and your right foot and toes. And do the same on your left side. Thigh, knees, calf, foot, toes. And then bring your attention to your whole body and notice where you feel any sensations. And just notice them. And just again, notice your breath and let your whole body settle into this practice. Now I want you to imagine the sun is shining. And think of the sun rays, or feel those sun rays, the warm rays of light infusing you, as if you're laying on a blanket in the sun. The beautiful yellow energy and the ribbons of light surrounding your body. And observing your breath. Your calm breathing. Again, if you're noticing your thoughts take you somewhere else, just come back to the breath. Feeling your chest rise with each inhale. Noticing your bodily sensations. And feel that energy gently waking your entire body. Breathing in, sending oxygen to your head and face and your whole body. Giving air to your neck, shoulders, and chest muscles. Allowing yourself to take in the air to get ready to go on with your day. And I want you to allow those sun rays to infuse your whole body and breathe into your heart. Feel that golden energy to your heart center in complete gratitude for this day. And as we wind down with this practice, take in another deep breath. Keep your eyes closed as you come out of this meditation today. Start by wiggling your fingers and toes. Gently shift to moving your arms and legs as needed. And when you're ready, open your eyes and get ready to move on with the rest of your day. Namaste and thank you. And I'm going to close with this, also Ann Barnes' statement. She says, mindfulness is not something you achieve overnight. It's a habit which is developed gradually over time. The best approach is to take baby steps. Start by picking one or two opportunities to treat with a mindful attitude every day. You might decide to be mindful just brushing your teeth, walking to the car, opening a door, or making a cup of tea. Whatever you choose, make sure you give your whole attention to it. When you open a door, watch your hand grasp the doorknob. Feel the weight of the door as you pull it open and hear the sounds of whatever it is on the other side of the doorway. So if you do this every time you open a door, you'll be amazed at how automatic the process becomes. And this simple ritual will allow mindfulness to establish a foothold in your life, and all you need to do is take baby steps and commit to being mindful for a few seconds several times a day. So with that, namaste, and I thank all of you, and I know we're almost out of time. Are there any questions I need to answer?
Sharon, we had a couple of good questions. Like Sharon said, thanks again for everyone joining. If you want to stick around, we'll answer a couple of questions and be on the lookout in the next few minutes for the post-webinar survey and knowledge check information. But Sharon, the first question that we had, it says, I have been working for quite some time, pre-COVID even, to promote a culture of well-being to norm mindfulness in meetings and the classroom, and any strategies to overcome barriers of naysayers?
Oh, that's a great question. And for somebody who's also been doing that for decades, I guess what I would encourage you to do is to find a buddy, for starters, to find a champion and someone who can be your support person. And then some of the things I've done over the years is I've created in some meetings, walk the talk is one thing I called it. A mindfulness moment was another one. And I made them very benign, and because some people get wigged out about meditation and what it means, and really usually they're misinformed. So I would start small and just get your leader, if you're the leader, just get permission to try something small. One time I even organized a little, everyone would take turns, and it could be that you just share a great recipe with someone, but it was all about being mindful in the moment. Or it could be just playing a favorite song or getting up and taking a little walk around if it were winter. But if you lay the groundwork and sort of reduce the fear that people have about this touchy-feely stuff, I think, and show the evidence. if you can show the evidence of how this can change lives, you'll be more likely to get the support you need. So good luck. And if you want to call me and talk to me, I'll be happy to give you some more ideas.
Another question was, do you have any tips for individuals with ADHD?
Great question. I think mindfulness is a useful technique for people with ADHD. You might want to incorporate some basic cognitive behavioral skills when you're struggling with ADHD as well. It's also a possibility that medication will help you. But regardless, mindfulness can really help you bring that attention focus. It may just take you a lot longer to cultivate it. And you may want to start with very easy tasks, like the doorknob example, and easy ways. And then again, not judge yourself or beat yourself up for not doing it right, or performance-based mindfulness, but keep trying every day to cultivate your practice.
And then we'll just do one more question. How does one learn about how to handle stress when the half hour you spent learning about those techniques makes you more stressed because that was half an hour of time you should have been doing to the overwhelming amounts of work that you have?
Okay, so I have a really good question to fire back at that question, because it's a great question. I would ask you to think about what's most important in your life, and think about what legacy or what do you want to have accomplished in your life, and what impact do you want to make. And if health and well-being are part of your goals for life and important to your purpose, then you might have to step back and look at how you're using your time and where you're dedicating your energy and your time. Because if you are not finding it, you don't even have 30 minutes. And this is a common question. I wouldn't be pointing a finger at anyone here. But if you're finding that you're not even having time to do that and it's making you stressed, I really encourage you to do self-assessment about how you're prioritizing what's most important to you in your life. Because really, in the end, this is up for all of us to manage and to improve our health and well-being and avoid disease.